everyone, this is caucuses, and welcome to today's video in our DCS map tour series. Today we are going to be going from the airbase up at Maykop east, and we're going to be hitting up all the remaining Russian airports on this map, namely the northern Russian air maps, the Russian air bases and airports that are north of Georgia on the eastern side of the map. So Russia, by the way, goes all the way over here, down here, and then to this is where Georgia nominally starts over here. Georgia really starts over here. I think that's I forget the name of the country, but it begins with an A. It's kind of one of those countries that's not really a country, because it's a bit of a weird thing. It's been one of those things where, like, I think it was part of when Russia invaded Georgia in 2008, they invaded here and then they took over basically this area, and they sort of made it to its own little country, but it kind of really is Russian territory. But Russian territory up north of the Caucasus goes from basically there all the way down there, then goes on the northern half of the Caucasus map. So we have Merlian Vodi, Nauchik, Beslin, and Mozdok. So we're going to go over here to Maykop and get started on runway 04. Quick mention about Maykop. I already talked about this in my last video, but Maykop is is definitely one of the major air bases for your Red 4 aircraft in the area. If you want to use MiG-21s, it is actually a fairly ideal base for it because of the fact that the MiG-21 has the RSBN and PMG navigation equipment. I'm not going to be using it in this flight today. I haven't really played around a lot with the MiG-21, so I'm almost using this video as kind of an excuse to get myself better familiarized with the MiG-21, just its flight characteristics. Navigation is going to be a bit of a, I don't know, not really a hassle, but navigation is going to be definitely another thing I'm going to have to sit down with this aircraft and fully learn it, because it's very different from NATO setups. Plus, the MiG-21's RSBN and PMG only work on this map, so it's not entirely pointless, but unless the column, I think it's the Kola map. I think that's how you pronounce it. The Kola map. If that has the PMG, and the RSBN system, then it'll be really worthwhile to actually sit down and learn it, because it just won't be confided to 4 air bases on one map. So, in any case, so again, Maykop has the PRMG and RSBN beacons. It also has a bunch of, I believe they're ADF beacons. Something I also should mention before we take off, in the last video I did mention some of the civilian airports that we ended the video with. I mentioned that some of them actually have ILS systems. I wasn't thinking that of the time because unless you're using them to get some one-off random missions, so to speak, our ILS is specifically a U.S. system, or at least a NATO system, and particularly NATO Air Force system. So you're not going to be able to use the ILS system for the Russian aircraft that would, if you're trying to create a more realistic scenario, wouldn't be really operating from those air bases. But nothing saying you can't do a fictional scenario where you do have Russian NATO aircraft at those air bases. So, kind of also of note, a lot of the air bases we are visiting today are going to be civilian air bases, and they will have ILS systems. The only air base that we will be visiting today will be the final air base that has PRMG that we have yet to visit, and that is Maykop. So, without further delay, we're going to take off from Maykop and head to Mozdok. It's very similar sounding, but entirely different air bases. But say goodbye to Maykop and head to Mozdok. because Mozdok is the other air base that actually has was the final air base in our tour of this map that actually has the RSBN and PRMG systems. So let's see here. Let's get those flaps up. Get this down to neutral. Gears are up, I believe. Do a quick little external view. Well, I don't want to deafen everyone, so let's see here. There we go. Yep, gear up. Just double checking. Like I said, this is an aircraft that I very rarely fly, so I wanted to make sure I actually put the gear up. Kind of important. Also kind of important because, like I said, I don't really fly this aircraft a whole lot, and also we have a little bit of an interesting non-map trivia. A lot of Russian aircraft, especially high-fidelity ones, they have a very interesting gear system where you have to lower the gear to lower it, and then raise the gear to raise it. But once it's in the raised or lowered position as desired or as needed for landing and takeoff and all these other fun procedures, you actually have to drop the gear into a neutral position. And part of the problem with dropping into the neutral, and well, not part of the problem, but one of the things that they do to help the system so it doesn't get knocked into raised or lowered, is you also have to then go in and lower a gear handle. Basically a gear handle lock. So those are things you just have to be aware of when you're flying, if you start getting into Russian aircraft, that at least the MiG-21, I know the Yak-52 has this, where you have to worry about the gear fixator. I believe the Mirage F1 also has that. It might just be something older aircraft have. I've never seen it on the NATO aircraft, though, so that just might be a Russian aircraft thing. So, plenty of fuel for our trip. We got 2 external bags on our MiG-21 here. Got some R-55, some older Russian air-to-air missiles, just for the lulls. And let's see here. We're actually stable, weirdly. Well, not weirdly in the sense that, like, we're not, we actually are, like, not, like, rising or sinking too fast. Because they trimmed her out pretty well. And we're heading due east. Let's see here on the map if that's right. We're going to go ahead and just do this for a cheat for right now. Alright. Anyway, we're about right. We're definitely going to, once we get closer to that Maryland Vody, we'll go ahead and we'll swap over to, well, we'll definitely swap over to the map view just to make sure we're on course for it. Thankfully, once we get to Maryland Vody, the other, Maryland Vody, in that side kind of marks the beginning of, like, that cluster of airports. It's really interesting how, like, you have, like, 4 airports, like, not really right on top of each other, but, like, pretty close to each other. But there is getting to Maryland Vody is quite a bit of a trip, and that's kind of why we're also taking the MiG-21, because it's a little bit faster than, decently fast. We can get there in a reasonable amount of time. Make sure to take extra bags, fuel, just to make sure we get there in a reasonable amount of time too. And yeah, I will say lastly to note, this is, as you've probably figured out now, this is the Caucasus map in winter. Figured I'd give it a bit more of a cloudy weather today to just showcase, like, oh, the clouds work here, how cool it is with the clouds. Zoom in a little bit so you can show you the winter texture. You have the fields and the grass and the trees. Again, the area between Krasnodar Center and Maryland Vody is very flat, and even all the way out to Mozdok, it is very much a whole bunch of flatlands. So again, really good for tank battles. You can easily see, like, using those as grid squares, so to speak. You can have tanks, like, using the very few trees as cover for rockets or even just, like, artillery, anti-tank missiles and shells and whatnot. Just providing just very scant cover. But also, as a pilot, this is prime SAM territory because you don't have any cover to dodge behind. Other than maybe, like, say, duck below those trees back there. But that's not going to do you much good. And I'm going to swap my view over to the other side of the cockpit, if I can. Guess this is as far as over I can go. Can't really see out in the distance too well, because it is quite a bit of ways. But out there, those are the mountains that perform the... that's the beginning of the Caucasus over there. And beyond that would be the actual Black Sea. So you can definitely... there's definitely a lot of play space here. Definitely a lot of things you can do. Kind of simulate like a giant, like, you definitely simulate a almost sort of like an inland battle here, where there's plenty of space, there's plenty of play space between here and the actual ocean. You can just have a whole bunch of aircraft like dog fighting each other between Mozdok and Maykop. So, actually, there's pretty much there's not really much else to go over. You've seen a whole bunch of flat land before. So I'll just go quiet for the next little while and let you soak in just how much land there is in between the two airports. And we only have, let's see here. Oh, holy crap, we are actually going in the wrong direction. Slightly wrong direction. Maryland Vody is to the south, so... yeah, this is what happens when you don't have navigation equipment and you try to do long flights. Let's bring down the fuel a little bit. Well, we still have plenty of fuel, because once we get to Maryland Vody, there really isn't that all much. The airports beyond Maryland Vody are very much almost on top of each other. So let's see here. Yeah, 100 nautical miles, so... I might even just throw a cut in here till we get closer to Maryland Vody, because there really, as you can see, there isn't even any major cities, by the way. I should probably mention there's like one major road here on the map in between the two bases. There's Maykop. Therese here is the only big city, and then the lake here, and then there's Maryland Vody. So it's not like it's pretty much 140 nautical miles of almost nothingness. There are a couple of ADF beacons, though, in between the two locations. So it's not like you're going to have a hard time. If you know how to do ADF navigation, at least, with your aircraft, you can easily... You don't need an INS to navigate between these two airports. So at least there's that going for you. And also I would mention... because I keep on thinking, I'll stop talking, but ideas do keep on popping in my head. One thing to note is I could imagine if you're on a server or something and you're like trying to navigate your way all the way to like this end of the map to like do operations and missions, I can easily see you using this upcoming airport of Maryland Vody as sort of like a refueling stop, just because it's pretty far out. So just literally just strapping on like as many fuel tanks as you can, and just like flying out to Maryland Vody just to use that as your actual rearming point. So there we go. Now we're closer to being on course, and with that, I will this time stop to go radio silent, and I'll see you when we get over Maryland Vody. Hello everyone, welcome back. I figured I'd put in a cut in the video right there, just to cut out some just pretty much boring flying. It definitely is quite a lot of waiting around and just like looking at more at like barren fields, not even like a little bit of a forest or a town to break them up in between Maykop and Maryland Vody. But here we are over Maryland Vody, and we can already see that a whole bunch of things have actually popped into view, so we can actually see more varied terrain other than just empty flat land. The terrain here gets a little bit hilly. There actually is a mountain right below our nose, and there's Maryland Vody on the nose. There's lots of urban area around here, and there is quite a sizable town next to the airport. This is definitely a municipal one of those. It's definitely an not a municipal airport. It's an international airport. Lots of room for lots of different aircraft, particularly larger aircraft. We can definitely have a whole bunch of fighter-sized aircraft also spawn here if you wish. It does have an ILS system, but no TACAN, no military navigation aids, just the ILS system for coming into landing, as well as the Russian system of having the two ADF beacons. Excuse me. Yeah, it's the Russian system having two ADF beacons, so you can use both the ADF beacons to line up for landing, as well as navigating to the airport. So nothing too big. It is a very long runway, so that is also what also works in your favor. Long runway, lots of parking spots. It's a pretty nice, hefty airfield for operations that you want to partake in or make around this area. There are the next two airports that we're going to be going over, Nauchik and Besland, are actually fairly small. Let's see here if I can't spot them here. Let's see here. We're doing pretty good on fuel, so we can go ahead and gun the engine a little bit harder. Nauchik is actually nestled in fairly close to these mountains up here. Nauchik Airport is going to be a really interesting one. It also has an ILS system, but its ILS system only goes in one direction, and you'll see why once we get a little bit closer. I believe we're not that far out from Nauchik, so no. See Nauchik's right there. You can also see on the this section of the map. I'll zoom out a little bit here. I can see a little better. There's a whole bunch of these ADF beacons here, which are the little circle of the dots radiating out from them. There's a whole bunch of these ADF beacons. Definitely, if you're making missions, use those beacons. Put them in a need board, and you can use them sort of as waypoint references, so that pilots don't get lost, and or you can sort of reference offsets and just bearings from them. Let's see. That's definitely not Nauchik. Nauchik has a sort of like a V shape to its in its city, and the airport in Nauchik is located at that V. So it's another it's a fairly easy airport to spot once you know what you're looking for. And it is, I have to say, this is another one of my favorite parts of this map, is the mountain range that just forms off your right. This is the northern half of the Caucasus map. So you do, once you're a little bit closer to this, it actually, having the wide open terrain here is a nice contrast to the mountain range to the south here. If you have wide open space like everywhere, it gets a little boring. It gets a little samey, gets a little kind of frustrating from a mission creation standpoint, because there's nothing really to break up the map. But once you have like something like, there's a whole bunch of like empty space here, but then you contrast that with all of this mountainous space here, creates a really nice contrast. Nauchik should be coming up fairly shortly on our nose. Let's see here. Is that it? I believe that's it. Just like at our 11 o'clock. Trying to see if I can't find the airport from this far out. Okay. Guess I have to go this way. Keeping our speed relatively good. That's why we're acting. That's why our aircraft's acting a little bit weird. Yeah, we're just right above. We're experiencing that Mach effects where we're just underneath Mach. So the transonic region sometimes can make your aircraft do funky things. So that's why I was starting to be a little bit bounty there. So cut back on the power just a little bit. And we are over Nalchik, so it's not like we need to worry too much about fuel, because we're already at the second airport we need to visit, and the rest of them are actually all very close together. So I wouldn't be surprised I wouldn't be surprised if you get high enough you could actually see Mozdok would be out that way, and Beslan would be actually on or towards like further out on our nose, and I spy with my little eye Nalchik. So Nalchik Airport is interesting. It's definitely a smaller airport for a smaller city. It has a decent length of runway, but the big problem with Nalchik, and something you'll have to keep in mind with your mission creation, is that there's two sets of taxiways, but they're both on the southern end of the runway. So zoom out here. So as you can see, this northern end of the runway, there's no taxiway from it to the ramp. So you're gonna have to when you use Nalchik, always have aircraft take off from runway 06 and land on runway 24. Other than that, there isn't a whole lot of space for big aircraft here at Nalchik, but you can definitely have a bunch of fighters here for tactical aviation, or if you want to fly your Yak 52s out of here. It's a small little cute airport. Like I said, just keep in mind that there's only the taxiway on the one side. ILS only works on runway 24, so that's another thing to keep in mind. AI, I believe, is agnostic to that. AI will just go over. We'll use the runway heading that goes into the wind. So you want basically wind blowing towards heading 06 and coming from 24 in order to get the AI to take off from that direction. So it's definitely it'll be interesting to get AI to do what you want for that on that airport, but it is possible to get them to do whatever you want. So the next airport is Beslan. So unlike Nalchik, it actually has a bit more of a I want to say more of a sane layout. It's more of a balanced layout, where its taxiways are in the middle. However, that means when you do land or take off, you're going to have to taxi to the end from the ends towards the middle. So it's a middle ground compromise. It's not like you can use both runways, but you'll see when we get there what I mean by that. And again, you can just see the Caucasus, the northern half of the Caucasus map up here. All the trees out here. There are some roads, I believe, on this section of the map that actually leave south into Georgia. I think that there's only. I might need to do a sort of an amendment video. It doesn't really cover necessarily any going from airport to airport, but just like overflying the mountain passes. But there are actually, I believe, two main roads that go from Russia into Georgia. I'll have to actually find the actual routes, but I know one of them is past Beslan up here that way, and it goes into Tbilisi, and there's another one that kind of goes south into sort of more of the middle of Georgia. And the other road that on this map, by the way, that actually goes from Russia into Georgia is the coastal road that basically goes all the way from like Sochi down towards the western coast. All right, let's double check the map. See where we are. Beslan is coming up on our nose. My instincts were right. Just want to double check. Plus, also keeping myself honest. Also, just speeding just trying to make sure that we're not like wasting too much time misnavigating. We already had enough of that this episode. So here we go. See it. You can see Beslan on the nose. Beslan is another one of those smaller airports. Not a lot of, definitely no space for any heavier aviation. It's definitely useful for like helicopters and like smaller aircraft. I don't even know if a C-130 can technically land here. You can order the AI and DCS, by the way, to land at any airport, but if it's too small, the AI will land, but then immediately despawn if there's no parking spot that can hold it. So that's something you're going to have to keep in mind. That is a possibility. But helicopters obviously can generally land here without any problems. I know like smaller aircraft can take off and land from here. It's another, like I said, but then again, like I said, it's another one of those smaller local airports. It's not like I think it's technically on Google Maps listed as like Beslan something international airport, but it's just its size. It's definitely like a smaller airport. Or at least what we would consider here in the States, definitely a smaller, more municipal airport with only only like a small amount of its parking spaces for ramps. Only a small ramp for like smaller aircraft. Not a huge runway. The taxiways don't even go to the ends of the runway, so you're kind of like you have to actually probably when you get onto the runway to taxi to the end to take off, you're holding up traffic because you're not like immediately getting on the runway and taking off. You have to like go to the middle of the runway. Then while taking space up on the runway, taxi to the end and turn around. There are turnaround spots though, so it isn't the end of the world. So here we can see from this side of the middle A-frame. See, you see the turnaround spots at the end of the airfield, which are definitely going to be useful if you need to. When you land, you can use those to turn around if you need to. But other than that, it's not, like I said, it's not like that big of an airport. Smaller airport, smaller aircraft. Now, the last video, the last map, or the last airfield I want to do cover on this tour is Mozdok. And Mozdok is actually a fairly big airport. Well, sorry, it's a fairly big air base. And even on Google Maps, it actually does show some action. Definitely seems like, at least when the satellite was over there last time, it was used as like a transport base. Lots of larger aircraft in the area. Some of the, I wouldn't say buildings, but some of like the support structures did look overgrown and like disused. But on the other hand, could be camouflage nets. Could just be they didn't really care anymore. They didn't need it. But currently IRL, Mozdok has 2 runways. But in DCS land, there's only 1. It looks like there's 2 in DCS, but I believe the game treats the 1 as a taxiway. Not saying that you can't use the 1 as a secondary runway, but at the very least, it's not dressed up and or set up to look like an actual secondary runway. Alright, 3,000 pounds of fuel. We're doing pretty good on fuel. And is that no? No, wait, yeah, that might be. I want to say that's Mozdok right there. Yep, that's Mozdok. So, as you can see, Mozdok is right there. Beslin is like right behind us. Nauchik is like over there. Maryland Vody is somewhere a little bit further out that way. All four of these airports on this side of the map are actually fairly close together. So you can definitely have, you can definitely set up one of these airports like a divert airfield. You can definitely have story missions where one of the main airfields here gets knocked out, and while you're away, so you have to land at a divert airfield. All sorts of fun things can happen. You can definitely play around with using every one of the 4 airfields that this map has to offer. Let's see here. I'm going to bring down the throttle here in preparation for landing. We're obviously going to overfly the Mozdok one time. But we want to make sure we're all nice and slow so we're not overspeeding on our little adventure. We'll pop the landing flaps up. I'm just looking at that voltmeter for a second, because it's going to be... Just wondering why the voltmeter is reading so low on that. Probably nothing to worry about. All of our gauges seem to be working just fine. Our lights are working just fine. Our wing tanks are empty, so that's a good sign. We actually did there was actually a point to having them equipped. Let's see here as we get a little bit closer. So there's some action around Mozdok. There actually is a fairly sizable small town or small city next to the actual airfield. Definitely see that there is a taxiway that you could possibly use as a runway right there, but in real life that taxiway has always been there. The secondary runway would actually be just north of that main one right there. Obviously, very long runway. You can definitely use it for a whole bunch of heavy lift aircraft, like the IL-76s that I have there. But it's definitely you can definitely find even if you do a Google Map search, you can definitely find a whole bunch of other aircraft in the area or at this air base. You definitely find like MI8s, IL-76s. Lots of fun. You can definitely use this for a whole crap ton of other aircraft. Lots of parking here, which is good for AI, but also lots of open space if you want to have a whole bunch of player slots. Lots of also these revetments, and I can see down there. May not come through quite as clearly on this on the winter textures, but there are indeed revetments down there, and down there, and especially over here. So lots of you have lots of protected revetments. Although these slots would be interesting to use if only for the fact that it is a very long taxi from those 7 or 8 revetments all the way over to that side of the runway there. And that's even if they're using, I would say that probably like runway 09. If you're using runway 27, you have to taxi from there to there, all the way over, and then up to the airfield. At the very least, there is more than one taxiway, so you're not blocking traffic and operations, at least. So, that's Mozdok. Also, like I've said many times, this is one of those air bases that has RSBN and PRMG. So if you want to actually, so your so this is another good air base to host your MiG-21 campaigns and missions, just because of you can actually use the RSBN and PRMG systems that I don't know how to use myself right now. So let's see here. let's see if I can land this. I promise nothing. Feel free to laugh at me at the comments down below if I crash. There we go. Land in gears. Not. Okay. 3 green lights. That's what we want to see. Power. Power. And I also know that I'm flying away from the airbase. It's just... yeah. Hold on, what happened? Huh. Oh, I'm just punching out. Yeah, that was a rather explosive end to our, journey. Yeah. So, let's just go back and use the glory of the F11 map, get some ground view shots of Mozdok. So, that pretty much wraps up this video here, with a rather, again, explosive ending. Quickly to note with Mozdok, you can definitely use this for, I would highly recommend using this for your MiG-21 campaigns and or training missions, like I need to go underneath to even, like, land the aircraft. Definitely use it for that. Lots of parking here. RSBN, PRMG and RSBN systems. You definitely also have the ADF beacons on the map here. So you can use the ADF beacons to do your inner and outer beacon landings. Lots of parking spots. Lots of area for you to have player aircraft as well. And in general, just have fun with this area of the map. It's definitely an area of the map that's kind of like stuck in one of the corners, so it is out of the way, but you can definitely use that to your advantage, having a whole bunch of flights heading south over Georgia, over the Caucasus map, or heading out east to fight enemies out coming in from the east. So with that, I want to call it an end to this video. This is Loco S signing out from the Russian side of the Caucasus map. And the next video, we're going to start covering the Georgian side of the Caucasus map with aircraft that I am more familiar with flying, as well as terrain that I am more familiar flying over. So until then, see you later.